So celebrated author, passionate photographer, inveterate traveler. I mean, it's been exactly 30 years since I first read City of Jinns, and it's a fangirl moment for me to speak with you today. And, obviously an honor for Travel Dine to have you with us.
Honor for me to be here, Priya. Thank you.
Thank you. So, obviously we have 100 questions for you, but you have limited time because, as you're also the co-founder and director of the Jaipur Lit Fest. And since that's going to be opening on the 19th, I'm sure you're very busy. And so
it isn't my most relaxed week, it's true.
So we get right down to it. Why don't you start by just telling us about your journey with the Jaipur Literature Fest, as co-founder, and how, it all started, and why Jaipur to start with, how did you and the other founders think of doing it in a city like that?
So it's impossible to imagine now in an age when almost every small town in India has its own Lit Fest, and not just in India, but Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the Maldives. It's become now a sort of extraordinary wave, but Jaipur was the first. And before Jaipur, there was a very odd situation whereby there were literary festivals all over the West where one would see Indian authors. The only place where I wouldn't see them was in India. So, you'd go to New York and there would be Amitav Ghosh, Salman Rushdie, Vikram Seth, and Arundhati Roy. And then 3 weeks later, there'd be the Hay Festival, and there they would be all again. But, you then go to Delhi and you wouldn't see them except maybe when the British Council had held a launch, or there was no venue for writers. It's impossible to imagine that now because, in a sense, we are impossible to avoid these days. It started with a festival which was a wonderful festival called the Jaipur Virasat, the Jaipur Heritage Festival, in Jaipur, founded by John and Faith Singh, who also founded the Anoki shop, with all those wonderful printed textiles. And when they retired, this was their kind of retirement project. They handed the business over to their children in the time-honored Indian manner, and did this. And it was a wonderful festival involving their particular passions, which were music and fashion and design. And initially it didn't have any writers at all, and they invited me along in 2004 as the first writer at the festival. And I gave a session, and I realized this was a wonderful thing because it was in January when there are no other festivals in Europe because it's cold and miserable and everyone's in hibernation. It was in Jaipur, which is a city that people would love to go to, and it would be a wonderful winter break for anyone. And there were no other venues for writers, which gave platform, and yet there were Indian writing, particularly at that point, was all the rage. This was the period when there was that period when Booker Prize seemed to be entirely in Indian hands every year. Kiran Desai, Aravind Adiga, Arundhati Roy, and so on. And if it wasn't in Indian hands, then it was in the hands of Pakistanis, so Mohsin Hamid and Kamala Shamsi and all that. So it was very odd that there wasn't a literary festival. And I'd just done my first really big international book tour with White Moguls. And that was the first one of my books, which was a success, not just in Britain and India, but in many languages and in many countries. And if you are a successful author now, you can easily spend 6 months going from book fair to book fair, book festival to book festival. And I'd see Indian authors in every one, but I'd never see them in India. So I invited them to Jaipur. First of all, Hari Kunzri was our first invitation, and then it got bigger. We had 16 the next year. And then after a couple of years, the music went off and became the Jodhpur Riff, the Rajasthan International Folk Festival, which is still going. It's a wonderful festival in Mehrangarh Fort. And we stayed on in Jaipur on our own and became the Jaipur Lit Fest. And our first year we had Salman Rushdie, Kiran Desai, and Suketu Mehta. And suddenly everyone in Delhi, there'd been a slightly slotty about us, the sort of provincial Rajasthani festival. Why in Jaipur? Why is it in there? Suddenly all the Delhi kind of fashionable folk decided that we were worth going to and came to see us. Often, as you know, in this country, when something gets a kind of international name, suddenly everyone wakes up. That's not how it should be, but that is often how it is. And from that point, the festival just grew and grew and grew. And by about 2010, we were approaching 250,000 people. And just before the pandemic, we hit 1/3 of a million.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, I mean, and we're very proud how it's, become a fashion now. You can spend the whole of the winter months going from book festival to book festival, from Calicut to Chennai to Bangalore to Calcutta. And it's lovely to have started this in South Asia. But I also think it's a sign of a vibrant society, that it takes the written word seriously. Every festival is full of new writers, often young writers, who have wonderful things to say. My theory is that it's something that's deeply rooted in India, because India, although it hasn't had the Lit Fest as such, has always had a tradition of performed storytelling. Yes. Whether it's the scrolls of the storytellers, wandering storytellers of Bengal, or whether it's the oral tradition where the Mahabharata and the Ramayana was performed by bards, or whether it's Tamil country, it's the Sangam literature, or in Jaipur itself, every day the Durbar would start with poetry. So the idea that books are not just something to be read privately at home, but to be consumed publicly in the public space and performed, is an idea that this country is very familiar with for many senses. And I think that may be one reason why it's taken off in quite the way it has. This year at Jaipur, we are very lucky in that we've got really, every year we invite all the big prize winners, but usually some they know, or most of them they know. This year we've got Abdul Razak Khan, the Nobel Prize winner, Gitanjali Sri, the International Booker winner, Shehan Karuna Tilaka, the Booker Prize winner, Ruth Ozeki, the Women's Prize winner, Gitanjali Sri again, Sahitya Academy Prize winner. We got 2 Pulitzer winners, the Baillie Gifford, the Women's Prize. We got everyone. We've got the world's greatest writers. Everyone is turning up this time. And we've got some amazing...
How much in advance do you start sending out, approaching people to come and attend? Like how much?
Personally, I start my list. I do this along with Sanjay Roy, who's our producer. He has a small list often of people whose favours he wants to call in between you and me. And then Namita mainly does the Indian writers, particularly those in the Bhasha languages that are not in English.
Yeah.
My main focus is on history and on international writers.
Yeah.
I personally do it, mine in June. Namita sometimes starts a bit before me. But we have it kind of, the list kind of ready by September, and then we start sort of knitting it together in October, and it's pretty well locked by November. But then, of course, COVID comes, or someone gets married, or some trauma takes place, and the list. Even today, we've had 2 writers dropping out at the last minute, and we've had to fill their place. And so it goes on and on and on. The program does not remain fixed even after it's printed. The things are always changing. It's like a kaleidoscope, and one thing changes and everything moves.
But always exciting.
Certainly exciting. And this, as you said at the beginning of this interview, is not my most relaxed week of the year. I woke up to find 2 cancellations this morning, and that always creates a knock-on domino effect.
Sure. And you mentioned the music and the Riff Festival, but this year you have a music lineup again, like a return to music. So what made that?
Yes, we've always had a music stage, and because the festival grew from a music festival, we've always had the music stage, and initially it was sort of informal in that John Singh would just turn up with some musicians, and often Manganias or Langas from Rajasthan, because that's where we are, but other stuff too. Mm-hmm. And that's grown and grown. I think we've had fewer international bands lately, but we've got sort of Peter Cat Recording Company and all sorts of amazing stuff this year. And so, what I love about this, and I think the reason why it's been such a big success, and it is now the biggest literary festival in the world, and the reason I think is a combination of the greatest writers. We also have the wonderful location of Jaipur. Who wouldn't want to spend a weekend there? It's also a place, obviously, where there's countless hotels of every budget, good communications, good airports, and so on. It's a good time of year. January works weather-wise. It's cool mornings, cool evenings, warm but not hot afternoons. Yeah. And then it's just a great place to hang out, to go shopping. As your travel dine, you can travel and you can dine and you can shop very, very well in Jaipur.
Yeah.
And, most of our audiences that come in will at least spend one morning outside the festival.
Yeah. But do you feel that the people who attend, are they really that passionate about writing and books, or is it more like a style statement that they're there and, it's an event and...
But obviously, both are true. It's every session, if you've ever been there, is packed to often with kids.
Okay.
And the minute that the writer stops speaking, 1,000 hands go up. So that is there. But also, you're right, if you had, we have a bazaar where there's shopping at the edge of it. And, half of Delhi's there with Dior sunglasses, taking selfies. And I can't deny for a minute that takes place too.
Yeah.
But in the sense as it should be, I'm sure, when Shakespeare first performed King Lear in London, there were people outside, hanging around at the edge of the theatre, not taking much interest in the plot. I think that comes with the territory.
But they were happy to be there. That's the difference.
When Kalidas first put on Meghdut or something, this will get to, I'm sure this is the case then.
True. Well, hope so. Fingers crossed. And also literary trends that emerged post-pandemic. Anything like that you quickly noticed?
I don't think it's possible to say there's any literary trends post-pandemic, but certainly there's been a lot of writing. We were one of the few professions which were able to carry on, if anything, more. It's strengthened by the pandemic rather than weakened, in that we weren't able to go to lit fests and piss around and do all the things that normally distract us. And so at Jaipur next week, 18th, 23rd of January, there will be an incredible amount of amazing writers, including many of the world's most talented novelists, Abdul Razak Khana, Shehan Karnatakila, Gitanjali Sri. There's so much amazing stuff. So look on our program. It's going to be incredible.
Sure. And who's the most promising young author at JLF this year? Someone you would...
My personal favourite non-fiction writer, historian Anirudh Kanasetti, whose Lords of the Deccan, I think, is the best debut. He won the Tata Book of the Year, but he's only 26. But there's an extraordinary Persian writer called Mary Maslani, who's also going to be there, whose next book, Peasants, has just been bought by Brad Pitt, no less, for his company Plan B, and is a massive hit for Bloomsbury. So go and I think it's all about a subject which very few people are bothered with, which is farmers. We know little about the farmers' suicides in India, but we don't know that this is actually something that's happening to farmers all over the world, with supermarket chains and the mass producers crush the peasantry working on all that. So make sure you go to that session. It was highlighted yesterday, I saw, by our social media team as one of the top 5 sessions, and I'm sure it will be.
Well, that was my next question, which are the 3 sessions that you're most looking forward to at JLF?
So there's an archaeologist called David Wengrow who wrote the Dawn of Everything. I read it over Christmas and I disagreed with a lot of it, but I thought it was fascinating, and I'm looking forward to asking him some questions. His theory is about does the beginning of towns and the beginning of urbanism and the agricultural revolution necessarily mean that suddenly cities go into hierarchies, that you suddenly get, like in Mesopotamia, you get the ziggurat-aba and you get this. And one of the main pieces of evidence for his thing is the Indus Valley civilizations, which do not seem to have had hierarchies and everyone's houses were the same size. So anyway, that's going to be an interesting session. What else would Anirudh Kanasetti's session is going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Abdul Razak Khana's session is going to be extraordinary. And maybe to finish, Amia Srinivasan on the right to sex, which was she's the first Indian origin professor of philosophy in Oxford, and she's created a lot of waves, and if I think that's going to be one of the most controversial and interesting sessions.
Interesting. Thank you so much.